Hello everybody, and welcome back for the second episode of World Builder. Last time we built the continent of Lumeros and discussed some of the biomes that were in there. But today let's talk about our major factions. But before we get into what we have here, let's talk about how things are handled in classical fantasy, especially things like Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm going to use the Lord of the Rings as a particular example. When it comes to villainous factions in fantasy works, they're almost always pure evil, and the good is almost always pure good. Looking at something like Sauron in the Lord of the Rings, he is often seen as this true grand force of evil that cannot be swayed to the side of good and cannot be understood. He is a truly evil being. But in Tolkien's own words, nothing is evil in the beginning. Tolkien himself does not view evil as this 100% absolute concept. To him, it's kind of a scale of good and evil, and things tip back and forth, but no side can ever be 100% on one side. It cannot be 100% evil or 100% good and zero of the other. It needs to have a balance to things. And that's one of the things I want to address with this world. I do not want any of my factions to be the evil faction. I want all of them to have their positives and their negatives. I want to show them as people rather than a force to be stopped by adventurers. And speaking of adventurers, let's talk about Dungeons and Dragons real quick. With a question. What does an ancient red dragon, one of the most powerful creatures in all of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and a tiny frog person have in common? They both own slaves. That's the problem with most villainous creatures in Dungeons and Dragons. The main idea of what makes them evil is that they own slaves. And I think that there's more to being an evil faction than just, I own another person. Your villains are never just, look at me hoard my people. There's so much more to what makes a compelling villain. And I think that Dungeons & Dragons, though because it is based on improv and what the DM and the players bring to the game, I think there's more to it than that, and just what is the fluff that is written in the book needs to be more than that, which is what I want to give. I want my fluff to be more than just, yeah, this faction owns slaves and they're bad, and also this guy owns slave and he bad. I think there's more room to expand. But let's move on to the factions that I have in Lumeros. Now, this time I'm going to be giving a brief overview of the 3 major factions. They are not the only factions, but they are the ones that adventurers will encounter most throughout their adventure. Vendarin exists as the most technologically advanced nation in Lumeros, though they do only inhabit mostly the northern part of the continent. They are a society that has combined magic and technology to be able to live in unison. Magic items are a common, everyday occurrence even for the poorest of people. For their government, they exist as what I am calling the Council of Five. It is a representative of 5 guilds, each rotating out every year to where no guild will be continuously ruling. So if the Mage Guild will have an executive for 5 years, and then after 5 years they will switch out with someone else, and it will be a length of time before they come back. I'm not sure about exactly how many, because I don't know how many guilds I'm going to have yet. But though they appear to work together outwardly, inside, and there's always plotting going on between guilds and trying to accrue more power and more wealth for the individual guild over another guild. Next is the Kanshiro. They inhabit the plains of Lumeros, mostly. Now, they are a nomadic society for the most part. They do have main cities, but throughout the plains you'll find all these ghost towns and abandoned settlements and things like that, where they stopped for a time and then built houses and then just moved on once the crops dried up, or the animals dried up, or whatever they were searching for is gone. In terms of leadership, they operate similarly to the shogun and daimyo system of feudal Japan. They have a singular leader who exists as the head figure of their society, and then below them there are 4 generals. Each general kind of oversees a certain section of the land that is divvied up to them and reports back to the head. But when the head dies, through any cause, be it murder or natural, the 4 generals will then have a battle. Generally it is one-on-one, though that has been different in the past, to determine who is going to be the next leader. Usually this does not devolve into one general killing another, but it has happened in the past. Now, when a new leader is selected at the end of that battle, they may either keep the previous generals, or they may move them completely out of the way into another subset and create their own series of 4 generals under them. And the last major faction is the Zehu, a theocratic nation. Their religious leader, the archbishop of their church, also acts as their king or queen throughout at the same time, but not at the same time. Some days it is good to be pope, some days it is good to be king. It varies from day to day. Now, in terms of their population, they are a very isolated nation. Do they allow outsiders in? Yes, but they exist in what is essentially a border town that is strictly for outsiders of the nation. If you want to be welcomed into the fold of the full nation, there's a long series of steps and processes that you have to go to be welcomed in as a true member of that society. And the archbishop is not the only person ruling. They have a council of 7 that is advisors to them, though there have been rumors circulating that the advisors are trying to become the true leaders of the nation and make that the key figure in the government. And their land is somewhat barren. It's not 100% usable. So a lot of their resources actually do have to be imported into it. So they can't be 100% isolationist, but they can present themselves to the world as a much better off nation than they are. So that is a quick overview of what the 3 major nations of this world are going to be like. The next couple episodes are going to be me talking in more detail about those. And that's not the only nations. There are smaller factions that don't have as much claim to power or land or society in general that I will talk about at a later date, but not right now. Please leave a comment below with any ideas you have for them. I will be working on the major nations in much more detail next time, so please leave ideas for them down below. Like and subscribe if you want to keep up with what's going on. I have other things on the way. I'm like scripting 3 different videos right now, so yeah. But if you made it this far, thank you for watching, and stay safe out there, because we're still in a pandemic while I'm filming this.